Hey guys, and welcome to the next episode of In Depth. This is the series where I cover a bunch of units, primarily from the Thousand Suns and from the Demons range, and we cover all of their stat lines, special rules, abilities, how to use them, how to beat them, and how to get the most out of your army using that unit. This week's video then is the horrors. That includes pink horrors, blue horrors, and brimstone horrors. So let's take a good look at what this video is going to be covering. As you can see on the screen now, we have a bunch of blue, pink and brimstone horrors, all from my own very own collection, and we're going to be discussing these units a little bit more in depth and covering all of their stat lines, uses, rules, how good they're going to be on the tabletop, and if you're facing them, how best to beat them. Let's start with the brimstone horrors, the pair of brimstone horrors in fact. They have a movement of 6 inches, a weapon skill of 5+, no ballistic skill because they don't shoot anything, a strength of 1, a toughness of 3, 1 wound, 2 attacks because there's 2 of them on a base, a leadership of 7 and a save of 6+. Now horrors are a single entry in the codex and that includes pink, blue and brimstone, and you start with a unit of 10 for a power level of 5, and that 10 can include any combination of pink, blue or brimstone. So you can have 10 pink for power level of 5, you can include an additional 10 for an extra 5 power level, or an additional 20 for a +10 power rating. So you can have, in effect, any combination up to 30 strong in a unit of pink, blue or brimstones. But we'll cover pink and blue a little bit later in the video. There are no war gear options for brimstones because they just don't do anything, but they do have a number of abilities. The abilities listed are Daemonic, Ephemeral Form and Daemonic Ritual. What they do have, in addition to that, is Magic Made Manifest. This allows a unit of horrors to attempt to manifest a single psychic power in a friendly psychic phase. But they only get to roll 1 dice for it, so anything with a casting value of greater than 6 you're never going to be able to get off. So pretty much what you're looking at is a Smite. Smite is cast on a 5+, so you've got a 1 in 3 chance of getting a Smite off. What that also means though is because you're only ever rolling 1 dice, you can never suffer from a perils of the warp test, as you can't roll 2 1s or 2 6s. So that can be quite beneficial. A 1 in 5 chance of getting a Smite is pretty cool. Now when it comes to purely brimstones casting Smite, any time that you do successfully cast that power, a single brimstone horror selected is slain after that psychic power has been used. Basically they burn up their own energy getting the power off. But there's ways around that we'll get to shortly. Because it is only a low powered smite as well, it only inflicts 1 mortal wound rather than D3. But that's providing that the unit only contains at least 10 pink horrors. If you've got less than 10 pink horrors, you only inflict that 1 mortal wound. If you include 10 or more pink horrors, then you do get a mini smite where you can do D3. Finally then, the faction keywords for horrors are Chaos, Tzeentch and Demon, and their unit keywords Infantry, Psyker and Horrors. So what actually makes horrors any good, or specifically brimstone horrors that we're looking at right now? A couple of things really, well 3 keywords, Daemonic, Ephemeral Form and Psyker. Those are the key ones for me. Daemonic gives you a 5+ invulnerable save, Ephemeral Form is +1 to that, so your little unit of horrors, which have got terrible strength and terrible everything across the stat line really, actually have a 4+ invulnerable save, and they've got a 1 in 3 chance of getting off a mortal wound from Smite. That for me is a winning situation. Now, horrors are only 3 points a model. They did start off at 2, that was given a mini nerf, and they were increased to 3 points a model, which means that your unit of 10, which is the minimum size that you could take of horrors, is 30 points. Where does that benefit you? Well, that comes into detachments, right? So what we're talking about here is filling out your detachments for all those command points, even getting to a brigade standard where you need 6 troops choices. You could run 6 lots of 10 brimstone horrors for 60 models. It's only going to cost you 180 points to fill out your entire troops obligation for that detachment. That is pretty damn cheap. And on top of that, what you can actually do, and what many people do, is run large blobs of them for area denial. Now this is another big thing. You can take 30 of these, extra super cheap models really. 30 of them is going to cost you 90 points. And then you can litter your entire table edge or any objectives and stop those deep striking units, or use them for screening purposes. If you're unfamiliar with area denial or when playing 8th edition, have a look on screen now. You can see a weird formation of Brimstone horrors deployed in a way that just basically prevents any unit getting within 9 inches of a whole area of board. That tape measure is showing 20 inches wide. You can't place your models if you're attacking Brimstone horrors by a deep strike or any other method of entry like to jump or Gate of Infinity or anything like that within 9 inches of that. So you've got a 9-inch span either side of that 20-inch gap, makes 38 inches. The depth of it is around about 15 inches. Again, add 2 lots of 9 to that. And you've blanketed a large part of the board where the enemy cannot get into your area. And that is one of the big things about 8th edition at the moment, is that you can screen off large sections of the board where objectives are, or you've got other things that you need to be prevented from being assaulted, for example. And this kind of setup here prevents that from happening. I also mentioned screening of units as well. So on screen at the moment I have a Demon Prince that's screened by some Brimstone horrors. Now this is also known as bubble wrapping as well. Now the Demon Prince is a character of less than 10 wounds, which means that standing there he's not the nearest unit to any enemy shooting, and therefore cannot actually be targeted by anything unless it's got the sniper special rule or any other special rule that does target characters. But on the whole, your Brimstones here are providing a great screen to stop your Demon Prince, even though he is like 10 times the size, from being shot. What it also does is means that you control the assault as well. So if it's not your turn and it's the enemy's fight phase and charge phase, and they want to get to your Demon Prince, they simply cannot get to him from this position without going through the Brimstones first. This technique obviously works on anything with a character with less than 10 wounds, so this Exalted Flamer here doesn't have more than 10 wounds, but it is a character. Quite a valuable character really, because he does fire mini las cannons using his Flames of Tzeentch. And again, you don't want him being assaulted or shot at whilst you have that screen in front of you. So you want to be preventing some of your more valuable characters from being targeted from shooting or from assaults, and that's what Brimstones excel at. So how are you going to take Brimstones in your army? You're going to take a minimum of 10 or a maximum of 30? Well, the first point to note is that I did mention during their psychic phase, if they do cast or attempt to cast Smite, that one of their numbers dies. There's a nice little cheap trick to get around that, which we'll just show on screen. There we go. Simply add a single blue horror to the unit. So for the sake of an extra 2 points, you now do not lose any models when you cast Smite. As long as that Smite is cast from the blue horror, not from the Brimstones, then you're all good. Now how many you want to take is entirely up to you and how many points you're spending on your army. In this particular example is 19 Brimstones and 1 blue. But to go one better, you can go 29 Brimstones and 1 blue to max out your mix and match option of 30. So we've covered how best to use Brimstones, but if you're facing Brimstones, how do you kill them? A couple of methods really. Lots of low strength, high volume weapons. So things like Guardsman's Last Guns with front rank fire, second rank fire, anything with that kind of ability to shoot them. You don't want to be wasting anything that causes multiple damage because it's a waste of time because they've only got 1 wound. Equally, don't waste any weapons that have any rend abilities, you know, AP minuses to their weapons, because a 4+ invulnerable save just ignores that in the first place. But there are a few tricks to get rid of them a little bit quicker. If you have things like Null Zone or Death Hex, if you're a Chaos player facing them and can remove that invulnerable save, then that's going to get rid of them far, far quicker. There are so many of the little things that they do get in the way. They are very annoying. But if you can drag them into a combat with one type of unit, so if you come in from a flank, for example, and tie that unit in, they then have to consolidate and move into you for your fight phase, and their returning combats. That can then sort of shift all the balance and all the shenanigans of area denial open, and give you an option to come in from the other flank. Other than that, it is just a war of attrition with these little buggers. That's what they're designed for the Tzeentch players, is just there to be an encumbrance and to take objectives. But they do fall back pretty quick with low leadership. Once they start taking casualties, they do then just disappear through the morale phase. Just watch out for people that are fielding a Lord of Change with them. Lord of Change allows horrors to use their leadership, which is a leadership of 10, which is a little bit stronger than leadership of 7, so beware of that type of unit on the board. But other than that, yeah, you just want to inflict as many casualties as you possibly can with cheap, high volume weapons, and then let the morale phase do the rest. Let's move on to the Brimstone's bigger brother then, the Blue Horror. Blue Horrors have a 6-inch move, a weapon skill of 5+, still no ballistic skill, a strength of 2 though. They are double the strength of a Brimstone Horror by a factor of 1. Toughness 3, 1 wound, 1 attack, and a leadership of 7, again with a 6+ save. They share all the same other abilities to the Brimstone Horrors though. So they can be taken up to 30 in this mix and match formation in any combination of pink, blue or Brimstone. They can cast Smite, but they don't lose any models, which is why we were using that little Blue Horror as a trick earlier in the Brimstones. And other than that, they have no other discerning features whatsoever. They still rock the 4+ invulnerable save, but the big difference is these guys cost 5 points a model instead of 3. And what you're getting for that extra 2 points is 1 point of strength. Now for me, that is pretty pointless really. So I don't think I've seen anyone really using units of Blue Horrors in the game yet, except to buff your little mini units of Brimstones. So to be honest, there's not really much more to say about Blue Horrors other than they're more expensive than Brimstones, they have less attacks, they've got as much chance of doing Smite as anything else, and all you really need is 1 to add to a Brimstone unit. Other than that, I have no reason why you would ever use Blue Horror, certainly in a unit of Blue Horrors in the game at this moment. This may of course change when we get the Thousand Suns or a Daemonic Codex that has horrors in that has these changed, but at this time my advice, don't bother with Blue Horrors, so I'm not even going to talk any more about them. So the final unit of horrors we're going to cover then is the larger brothers of the Blues. That's the Pink Horror. These have a move of 6 inches, weapon skill of 4+, a ballistic skill of 4+, yes they can actually shoot, a strength of 3, so they're a point stronger in the strength, toughness 3, 1 wound, 1 attack, leadership 7 and a save of 6+. Again they share a number of common abilities with the Blue and Brimstone babies, so they do rock the Demonic Ephemeral form, giving them the 4+ invulnerable save, Demonic Ritual as well, and I'm going to cover Demonic Ritual and methods of deployment right at the very end of this video. These guys do have some options though, so you can actually take an Instrument of Chaos and a Demonic Icon with these units. A Demonic Icon is quite fun. Instead of removing models when you take a morale phase, if you roll a 1 during that morale check, you add D6 Pink Horrors back to the unit instead. So that's a little bit amusing. And the Instrument of Chaos, any unit that includes an Instrument of Chaos, add 1 inch to their advance and charge rolls. Now those options are a little bit expensive. An Instrument of Chaos is 10 points and a Demonic Icon is 15 points. They do have a shooting attack. As I mentioned, they've got a ballistic skill, so they actually have a weapon called Coruscating Flames. That has a range of 18, it's an Assault 2 weapon, Strength 3, AP 0 and 1 damage, so it's pretty poor other than it's an assault weapon, so you do get those 2 shots without ballistic skill modification as you move. But other than that, yep, they've got a couple of other fancy rules. So the first one being Iridescent Horror. So when you first set up this unit for the first time, you can select a single pink horror in that unit, and that has an attacks characteristic of 2 instead of 1. Whoopie-doo. Not overly excited about that. Now, as I mentioned during the Brimstone section as well, if you've got 10 or more pink horrors, you do get the mini smites. You do get to do D3 mortal wounds rather than a flat 1, as long as that unit is 10 or more pinks. Now, pink horrors are a little bit more expensive. They did start off at 10 points, which was way overpriced and nobody used them. When the Brimstones got nerfed from 2 points to 3 points, pink horrors got reduced from 10 points down to 8, which makes them a little bit more affordable, but I'm still not convinced. So are pink horrors actually any good? That's the question. For 8 points, what are you getting? Well, if you took a base unit of 10 pink horrors, that's going to cost you 80 points. You can get 26 and 2/3 Brimstones for that. They both are pretty much wounded exactly the same from enemy incoming fire, and they both got exactly the same save. They both got that 4+ invulnerable save, which is what you're relying on. So what are you getting for your extra points? You're getting that Assault 2 rubbish gun, the Strength 3 gun, and you're getting a slightly better Smite. But other than that, you're not getting much more for your money. So for me, as with blue horrors, I'm still struggling to find a reason to take pink horrors in a Tzeentch army, or in a Tzeentch demon army, sorry, because you want to be spending your other points, the big hitters in your army, on things like the Lord of Change, or Kairos Fateweaver, or certainly things like the Changeling, Demon Princes, you know, those kind of units, the big hitters in your army. What these little cheap troops are doing is holding your home objectives for you, happen to have a little bit of smite. They're a pain in the arse to shift, area denial, screening, and to do that you want them to be as cheap as chips, and you want to be able to use them to fill out your detachments, get those command points for some of the more useful abilities in your army. So for me, pinks really at this stage don't have any place in my army, certainly for match play. Now there is a discussion to be had if you're playing power level. All horrors have the same power level ratings. They start at 5, as I said, for 10, go up to 15 for 20, and go up to 25 for 30. So power level wise, your pink horrors cost as much as anything else. So in match play, there is absolutely no downside to taking pink horrors. And there's also a second part to that, is the split rule. Now I haven't covered the split rule yet. In narrative play, let's talk narrative because we're just starting on that subject, a split means that if you lose a pink horror, it broods up outside of it and bursts out of its guts 2 blue horrors. So you start with your little unit of pinks, one of them dies, it forms 2 blue horrors. If those blue horrors die, they then turn into brimstone horrors. In narrative non-match play conditions, you're not paying for that, they are free models. All you're doing is paying for the pink. Absolutely take pink in your narrative play. In match play, all of these reserves cost you points. So if you want to do the same trick and buy, say, 10 units of pink horrors at 80 points, and they then burst into blue horrors, you've then got to pay for 20 blue horrors at 5 points apiece. Your unit of 80 is now costing you 180 points. On top of that, you've then got to buy 20 brimstone horrors at another 60 points. You add those together, it's a very, very expensive unit. The unit can go beyond the 30 starting strength because of the way that that split works. But for me, match play, pointless. Narrative play, yeah, go for it. Definitely go for it. There's no downside in power level, and you're getting, in effect, free models because you haven't got to pay for those backup units, those split bread units. And finally, really, there are 2 ways to deploy these kind of demons. One is the Daemonic Ritual, where you reserve a portion of your army in what is effectively known as reserves. So you can portion off, you know, say 400 points of models that are strictly reserved for the Daemonic Ritual process. Now, the Daemonic Ritual is a character, a chaos character, can summon demons to the table by rolling up to 3d6, and that becomes your summoning roll. And that value is where you compare that to the power level of the demons you're summoning. So if you've got your, you know, these guys have got a level of 5, power level of 5, so you roll 2d6, if you get 5 or more, you can bring on a unit of horrors. The good thing about that is your pool that you're allocating for this, you don't have to declare what models are in that to your opponents. You can have a big pile of Flamers of Tzeentch, or Exalted Sorcerer, Exalted Flamers, or Flamers, or whatever, in a big pile, and then depending on the scenario you're facing, you can summon appropriate units to the board. So if you're facing a big horde that's about to assault you, you might want to take a whole load of Flamers, because as they assault you, you're going to kick out a load of d6 auto-hitting wounds. So that's pretty cool. The other method is simply putting them in a detachment, filling out your detachments and putting them on the board. So far, demonic summoning for me is not something I've really tried. I can't see any advantage in doing it at the moment. What I want to do is fill out detachments and get command points. Command points are key. Filling out detachments is key with cheap troops, and that is where I feel the focus should be for things like the horrors. Now, whether I'm taking pink, blue or brimstones, for me, I am taking either 19 brimstones and 1 blue horror, or 29 brimstones and 1 blue horror in multiple units. Now what I may do is also share, because they share the chaos keyword, is easy to fill out a chaos space marine detachment as well. So you can cross detachments and fill out and bulk out troop options in there as well to get those command points. But for me, the biggest key of using horrors is area denial, cheap spam of smite, screening units, as I showed in those pictures earlier. In fact, I'll put them back up on the screen now, and filling out detachments. Those are the two things that you really need to worry about. That's what these units excel at. Other than that, you want to be spending all the points in your army on other cool stuff. So there we go, that wraps up this episode of In Depth with Tzeentch Horrors. Hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope I've covered everything that is valid at this time of recording. So if anything comes along with a Daemonic Codex or a Thousand Sun Codex that's got horror updates, then I'll be sure to update this video. But if I have missed anything, or you think of other reasons to be using blues and pinks, because I certainly can't think of any, feel free to leave a comment below this video. That would be cool. And we can open up a discussion about it and see what you think and how you're using these particular units, or are you favouring the Brimstone spam like myself? Either way, hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall catch you on the next one.